Hello again and welcome to another Warlord Wednesday. In today's episode, we shall once again be casting our ever critical eye over another bolt action unit. And this time, I've got a special one for your viewing pleasure. Today's unit is by far the most requested thing for me to review. I mean, it's not even close. Since I started covering Warlord Wednesdays, people have been asking for me to take a look at this particular tank. And it is a beast. It is an uber meme unit. I am, of course, talking about the Panzer VIII, also known as the Mouse. And so, without further ado, let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Mouse. As is tradition, let us begin with a brief overview of this unit. The MAU can be taken in 3 different levels of veterancy. You've got inexperienced, regular, or veteran. At inexperienced, it's going to cost you 464 points. At regular, it will cost you 580. And at veteran, it will cost you a truly eye-watering 696 points. Yes, that's right. In a standard 1,000 point game of bolt action, you could spend almost 70% of your army taking a veteran Panzer VIII. I believe that's what they call a flex. Now, being sensible for a moment, you're very unlikely to take. Well, unlikely is probably not the right word, because you, listening to this video, you can make it as likely as you want that you're going to take a MAU. You might be taking one at every game that you can take. But what I would say is it's very inefficient to take a veteran MAU. It's really going to put you behind on dice and unit activations, and it's almost certainly not worth its points. If you were to take a MAU, I think the best way of doing it would be as regular, and then you do that at a 1250 point game. In that scenario, it's actually not totally ridiculous, because you're getting a super heavy tank. It's coming with a ton of cool special rules, as we'll take a look at in a moment, but you still have close on 700 points to spend on the rest of your army, which you can get a hell of a lot for. So I don't think that the Mouse is great at 1,000 points, but 1250 regular, it becomes viable. It's going to do as it's told. It's not prohibitively expensive, and also it's going to be able to hit properly, unlike an inexperienced Mouse, which is still more than a Tiger tank, and yet would hit at -1 because of inexperience. So that's how I would suggest that you consider these points levels. Leave it for those slightly bigger games, and when you do so, take it at regular. However, caveat to all of this, if you are doing a thematic game, or you're doing a big one, maybe doing 2,000 points, nothing wrong with taking a veteran MAU at that level, because you've got more than enough left over to start getting all the bits you need for an effective list. Long story short, this unit should be considered for slightly bigger games and should be taken as either regular most of the time or veteran in those truly epic clashes. Moving on to its weapons, it has one turret-mounted super heavy anti-tank gun with coaxial light howitzer. Yep, not a coaxial light machine gun, coaxial light howitzer. That is epic. And one pintle-mounted MMG on the turret. Now, that turret-mounted super heavy anti-tank gun is very similar to the likes of the one on the Tiger or the King Tiger. It has an 84-inch range. It fires one shot. It is Pen +7, HE 3 inches. So it's a big old gun. However, with this being the Mouse, it has a special rule. 128mm KWK 44. This gun was almost as effective at long ranges as short ranges, so does not suffer the -1 penetration penalty when shooting at targets over half range. It counts as a full +7 pen bonus at all ranges. That's a pretty useful special rule, especially, again, if you're thinking of using this guy on bigger boards. If you're playing on a standard 6x4 and you're both playing at each other, deploying on the long table edge, then you probably don't need to worry about the 128mm rule because your half range is still 42 inches, so you're covered. But in scenarios where perhaps you're deploying on the short table edges and you're attacking each other along long distances, there are a number of narrative scenarios that use that style of deployment. Suddenly, that 128mm rule becomes really effective because there are going to be many times when you'll be firing over 42-inch range if you're playing on these bigger maps or these slightly different deployment zones. So it's a useful rule. There's no downsides to it, and in certain scenarios, it will actually be decent. The coaxial light howitzer has a 48-inch range. It fires one shot. It's HE howitzer and HE 2-inch template. You can fire it indirectly at 24-inch minimum range to 60-inch maximum range. Now, this light howitzer has a special rule, which is coaxial light howitzer. Although the coaxially mounted 75mm KWK-44L36 would in any other tank be a respectable anti-tank gun, it was fitted on the MAU as a coaxial weapon. When fired instead of the main gun, this allows the MAU to fire indirectly HE 2-inch rounds or 4-inch smoke rounds. We then have the pintle mounted MMG on the turret, and this gives you, being Germans with the buzzsaw special rule, 6 extra anti-infantry shots, which is decent considering the other guns on this are a one shot. But remember that pintle weapons, when you use them, for the rest of that turn, you count as being open topped. Now there might be a bit of pressure on you to feel like you have to use your MAU early on, because big tank, it needs to achieve something before the enemy might, start putting pins in it and stuff, right? I would resist that temptation. If you use the pintle early on, then you might end up picking up a lot of extra pins because you count as open topped. What I would suggest is leave the MAU until later so that you can use the pintle, get the maximum firepower out of this very expensive unit from the get-go. Or if you have to use it early on because there's something happening in the game where you're like, I need to get that first shot off, then just don't use the pintle. It's not worth giving the enemy the opportunity to start pinning up your 600 to 700 point unit with rifles. It's just not worth it. So pintle, it's good. It's there to give you a bit of anti-infantry, but use it wisely. Now that covers all of the weapons and associated special rules, but this being the Panzer VIII, it's got a laundry list of other rules. Not all of them are good either. Firstly, it's slow, meaning that it has a basic move rate of 6 when advancing and 12 inches at a run. This makes it much slower, obviously, than other vehicles. It's going to be moving about a third slower than a tracked vehicle and half the speed of a wheeled vehicle. In fact, it puts it on the same level as infantry for trying to get around the map. It's also got a really bad special rule. I'm not pronouncing this correctly. It's Gotterdammerung. I'm definitely butchering that. It's unreliable. Roll a dice every time the vehicle completes a move. On a 1, it is instantly broken down and out of fuel. The vehicle is immobilized the rest of the game. Yep, that's right. Every time you move it, you have a 1 in 6 chance of your ultimate, very, very, very expensive unit just immobilizing itself. That's not good. If you roll a 2, it starts to break down and the fuel is low. The vehicle may make one more move after this one, and then it rules out of fuel and is mobilized. So you have a 33% chance every time you move this thing of it just breaking. Maybe it'll break straight away. Maybe it'll break the turn after, but it's breaking. Oh, that's awful. And then on a 3+, Continue as normal. Everything's okay, but you roll again after the next move. Oh my god. I mean, god damn it, Warlord. Why would you make a unit 600 points and then make it break itself? You know what's interesting? I wonder how that interacts. If anyone knows, let me know down in the comment section how that rule interacts with the vehicle damage table. Because if you break down and are immobilized, and then someone penetrates your armor and they immobilize you again, does that count as the vehicle being knocked out? Because normally when you receive 2 immobilized results, the vehicle counts as being knocked out. So if that does work like that, then you have a 33% chance of making your very supposedly tough vehicle even more likely to be knocked out. Because if it immobilizes itself, then when someone goes to roll the damage on the damage table, on the penetration table, they have a 66% chance of knocking your vehicle out. They can roll a 2, a 4, a 5, or a 6. And then if they set it on fire, then it's going to take 2 pins. And it might all... So 5 out of 6 results on the damage table, after it's broken itself down, have a chance of just destroying it. Oh my god. That's so bad. Fortunately, the mouse does have another special rule which does help mitigate the previous craziness. Mobile Fortress. There's no penetration modifier for hitting the mouse from the side or top. The penetration modifier for hitting the mouse in its rear arc is reduced to +1. When you actually break this rule down, it does make it very unlikely that the mouse is going to have its armor penetrated. It might get glanced, but it's less likely its armor is going to get penetrated. Because if someone hits you with a medium anti-tank gun, and even if they hit you within half range on your side armor, they still can only glance you, because medium AT is 5+, so they need a 6, even your side armor. At long range, they can't physically penetrate you. So if they get a 6 to glance, well, that's -3 on the table. So they're less likely to get the immobilize. They need to get a 5 to immobilize you, which knock you out. They need to get a 6, set you on fire. So it's still a chance that you would obviously still suffer from the potential of immobilizing yourself or being set on fire, but it makes it less likely. Unless your opponent is bringing heavy anti-tank, which most people don't, then they're unlikely to get more than a glance. Now, that covers all of the special rules. Oh, no, I almost forgot one. The Mal does cause Tiger Fear. Okay, so we've covered all of the special rules and the weapons and stats for this vehicle. Let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. To be honest, we've kind of touched upon a lot of this already. So what I'll do is I'll just give you some of my musings and some thoughts I have on this unit. Firstly, it is very expensive. It's probably too expensive for most people to really consider outside of bringing it for a fun game. It's definitely a unit that would shine more in games that either had uneven points costs where one side is more than the other for some reason, or in games that don't use points costs, like we're just going to recreate a battle using the bolt action rules. Its points cost 580 points. It's just prohibitive. And unfortunately, it still can suffer from getting pinned a lot. If someone shoots an HE weapon at the Panzer VIII, even though it can't penetrate the armor, if it's only regular, you need to roll that dice. And on a 1 to 3, you still take the pins. So something as simple as a 50-point medium mortar or 50-point light howitzer to start smacking pins on this thing, and it only needs 1 or 2. Well, I'd say 2 or 3, because obviously it only has 1 pin on it. You can pass the order test and that pin goes away. So it only needs like 2 or 3 pins putting on it before it just becomes just combat ineffective. That's the problem with a big unit like this. If you're taking it in a remotely standard size game, there's so many ways that people can target it. It's like taking a Tiger tank. Tigers are, they're really good, but people just start slamming pins onto them, and your very expensive unit has to spend a turn rallying. And if you're playing in a standard game where there's only like 6 turns, having to spend 16% of the game rallying isn't great. Not great at all. In some of the narrative scenarios, which go on for 10, 11, 12 turns, that's nowhere near as impactful. On top of that, the main firepower for the Mao comes from its turret-mounted super heavy anti-tank with its coaxial light howitzer. But that turret-mounted super heavy anti-tank is one shot, and it has no special rules or stipulations for being able to ignore to hit modifiers. So it's hitting on a 3. Now, in an ideal scenario where there is no intervening cover, you're playing on Planet Bowling Ball, even with the Mao hitting on a 3. In a standard game, it means that 33% of the time it just misses. A third of the time that you use it, it's ineffective. And then you throw light cover in there, and it's 50% of the time it's going to miss. And there's so many other issues that you could come across. Heavy cover, units going down. So the problem is it only has that one big gun to do anything. And you might say, oh, it's got the coax as well. Yeah, but you can't fire the main gun and the coaxial. It's like if you're using a Panzer III, for example, that's got the whole medium machine gun, and it's got the coaxial medium machine gun, and it's got the turret anti-tank gun. Well, you have to choose whether you want to fire that turret anti-tank gun or the coaxial MMG. And the same thing applies here. It even says, when fired instead of the main gun, you can use the Mao to fire indirect HE rounds and stuff from the coaxial light howitzer. So if it got to fire both weapons, that would be decent, but it doesn't. It has to pick one or the other. So when you actually, and speaking of weapons, we sort of mentioned the pintle mount before and how you have to be careful with it. But if you're spending 600 points on 580 points on a regular mouse, and you can't risk using the pintle, and you can't use the coaxial, you are spending 580 points for one super heavy anti-tank gunshot. Which, sure, it doesn't suffer the -1 penalty for shooting at targets over half range, but it's probably going to be in half range most of the time because its half range is 42 inches. You could save 410 points and take a flak 88 with a spotter, and you'd get one super heavy anti-tank gun shot, and it could fire indirect with a medium howitzer rather than a light howitzer. So it's got all these sort of cool rules, like it's really durable, and it's got this gun that doesn't suffer the penetration problem. It's got a cool high coaxial light howitzer, but realistically, you're paying at a minimum 580 points for a super heavy anti-tank gun. When you put it like that, it really shows how ineffective this unit is. It is very, very durable. It is incredibly tough, and if that super heavy anti-tank gun hits, it will probably go through one side and out of the other wherever it hits. It will probably evaporate whatever infantry unit touches it. But that does not make up for the fact that it might just break down. It does not make up for the fact that it struggles to use all of its weapons. And it does not make up for the fact that it is wholly cost inefficient. In summary, the Mao is cool. It's awesome. It's badass. It's got a laundry of special rules. But outside of very casual fun games or specific narrative scenarios, I think unfortunately this bad boy is going to have to be considered shelf tier. But as always, this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have you ever used a mouse? I've never seen one used on the tabletop. I've only ever seen them in pictures in the Warlord books. Have you used one or seen one used, and how did it perform? And what are your thoughts on these super heavy tanks in general? King Tigers, mouse, they're kind of expensive. Have you been able to make them work? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.